Hi there, and welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. And today we're going to make some air fryer meatballs in the Ninja Foodi. I'm using the 6.5 quart, but you could use the 8 quart or even the 5 quart, or any air fryer that you have will work just fine for this recipe. So I have the basket in because I want to preheat, and we always want to preheat with the basket in. Well, most of the time anyway. So I'm going to preheat on broil. That's just my preference. You could preheat on the air crisp setting too, on 390 or 400. That would be fine. But I always just like to get the pot as hot as possible before we put in the foods, because that helps them to sear and not stick as much. So especially when you're doing breaded food, or like these meatballs, which aren't breaded necessarily, but if the basket is hot, it will not stick as much when you go to turn them, okay? Because they'll sear really fast. So broil is what I use, but again, you could use the air crisp setting, that'd be no problem. All right, so this recipe is so incredibly simple. It uses very few ingredients. You could switch up the seasonings if you want. You could add in onions. You could do a whole bunch of things, but this is just a very basic meatball recipe that you can use a ton of different ways. Jeff and I have made this recipe, and we had meatball subs one night that we ended up making in the Ninja Foodi. It was absolutely delicious. And today I'm gonna make a little marinara, which I already have here. I'll talk about that in a minute. We're gonna make a marinara over zoodles and use our meatballs, okay? So we're gonna make like a little spaghetti, but we're gonna use zoodles instead of pasta. All right, so the first thing we want to do is get our meat in the bowl. Now this is 1 pound of 80-20 ground beef. You could use 90-10, but if you do, your meatballs are going to be a little bit drier. So I do like the amount of fat in this, in the 80-20 blend for meatballs and meatloaf and hamburgers, of course. And it's just 1 pound. You could double the recipe. You will have to air fry them in batches. Let's see here. So let's get that out. And I also wanted to mention that I brought the meat to, well, maybe not to room temperature, but I took it out of the refrigerator about 30 minutes beforehand. So if your meat is starting to come to room temperature before you mix it, it's gonna mix up a little bit easier. It's also gonna air fry a little bit faster. All right, so to this mixture, I'm gonna add in 1.5 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. And then our seasoning blend. And again, super simple. It's kind of an odd measurement, but this is the measurements that I found gave the best flavor without overpowering anything. We have 3/4 of a teaspoon of fine grind sea salt, 3/4 of a teaspoon of basil, 3/4 of a teaspoon of onion powder, 3/4 of a teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. So real easy. All right, 1 large egg. There. And 1/3 cup of breadcrumbs. These are just plain, they're not seasoned. You could use seasoned breadcrumbs if you wanted, and then I would just cut back on some of the seasonings. And I'm gonna show you a little trick. If you're not sure if you've got your mixture well seasoned, I'm gonna show you how to test it, because obviously we don't wanna bite into this raw ground beef, but I'm gonna show you how to just cook up a little bit real quick and make sure that it is perfectly seasoned before you air fry all the meatballs. All right, so I'm gonna use my mix and chop. You could use your hands. I may switch, I'm telling you, because usually I just dig in with my hands, but this works too. I tried it before. It breaks up the meat really nicely, and I think it'll work. But if I get tired of doing it this way, I will just dig in there with my clean hands and get it all mixed up. That's looking really good. Let's see if I can resist, because I always feel like I've got to mix it by hand, but let's see. All right, just gonna kind of spread it around. Actually, I think it really mixed up nicely, so I'm fine with that. All right, so now we've got the broil setting on, and we've been going about 5 minutes. So the only thing you need to do is take a tiny piece of your mixture, pat it down, okay? So it's a tiny, tiny, tiny little flat piece of meat, and throw it in and let it broil probably 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll taste it and we'll make sure that our seasonings are perfect, okay? All right, so while that cooks up, I'm gonna go ahead and wash my hands, and then we will get to forming our meatballs. All right, so I did go ahead and flip that little tiny piece of meat over about maybe 45 seconds ago. It was almost done, and I just wanted to flip it over just to make sure it's completely done. And then I'm just gonna grab it out here, let it cool a minute while this continues to preheat. And then if the seasonings are perfecto, then I will start making the meatballs. I'm gonna do that with a medium scoop from Pampered Chef. To me, that's a good size. That's how I like them. But you could make them any size you want. You might have to increase the cook time a little bit if they're much bigger. But this is probably, I would say, about a tablespoon, maybe a little, no, probably a tablespoon, maybe tablespoon and a half. I can link to it below for you to the product, and you can find out what size it is. But, I mean, you don't need to get this. You can use any kind of a scoop or just pull some out with your hands and roll them in a ball. The other thing I wanted to mention is I use breadcrumbs, but if you wanted to use like crushed up pork rinds, you could certainly do that. That would be no problem. That would, make it a little bit lower carb. Then it might be completely low carb, I think. All right. Oh my gosh, so good. All right, so now to make the meatballs, I'm just gonna take this. Now I like to roll them. You don't have to. That's just my preference. I just like to have them completely round. And I'm just gonna set them on my cutting board until I'm ready to throw them in the air fryer. I do like to use a scoop because then I know they're all the same size and they're gonna cook all at the same time. You know what I just thought of? In one of my test batches, I did them all at the same time using an insert, and I didn't do that this time for the basket. Maybe I should do that. I would have to heat it up a little bit. But you know what? Let me do that because I know a lot of people have bought this little insert or might have something else, and so we can go ahead and show that too. All right, I'm gonna get rid of this. I'm gonna find that insert. I'm gonna heat a little bit, finish making the meatballs, and then I will come back when we're ready to put them in the air fryer. All right, so we've been preheating, well, I've done a couple different things, but we've been preheating probably about 7 minutes with the rack in. I'm gonna show you what the rack looks like. We're gonna go ahead and get the meatballs in and switch over to the air crisp function. So I have this rack. It is a canning rack. It is a 7.9 diameter with 2-inch legs. And I use these little guards here, they're oven guards, to keep it from falling through the holes. And I just use that to make a second layer for anything that you want to air fry. Now it doesn't work, I'm gonna close this while I'm talking. It doesn't work like perfectly well for things that really need that direct heat from the top and bottom. So because once you layer your food, you're inhibiting the heat if you have them stacked on top of each other. So try to alternate when you can. So you could get, 4 small pieces of chicken. You could just do 2 on the bottom and then alternate on the top. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, so I'm gonna take this out for a second. We're gonna get 9 meatballs, hopefully into the bottom of the basket, and then we'll put that back on and we'll put the other 9 on top. And that is something that my husband added. It is just a screw with some washers just to have a little handle. Otherwise, I was having to use my my fork, and it was just kind of, getting food out was kind of a little messy. So that works great. Oh, good, 9 fit perfectly. If you're using a leaner meat, you may want to put some oil in there. Just give a little spritz of whatever your favorite oil is. All right, let's get this on top here. And we're gonna put these down. Now, sometimes the upper rack will stick a little bit more. That's why I like to preheat it to get it hot so we can try to prevent that. So we'll see how it does. I don't mind if they stick a little bit. Those are gonna go into spaghetti, and then maybe the bottom ones we'll make for something else with, so it's fine if they stick a little bit. All right, so now we're gonna switch over. Let me go ahead and take this off here. We're gonna switch over to the air crisp function. And I'm gonna take the heat down to 375 and hit start. 20 minutes is fine. It's not gonna take that long, okay? It's gonna take somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes at the most to cook these through. But for the first 5 minutes, do not open the lid, okay? That's important. That's gonna allow the bottoms to sear, set up so that when we go to flip them, they don't stick, okay? So 5 minutes, leave it alone, and then we'll do a flip. All right, so it has been 5 minutes, and they smell good already. They look good. Now for the moment of truth. See if they flip. If they don't flip easily, we just keep going, okay? So if you have to force it, it's not ready to flip. I'm gonna go ahead and put that right there. And let's see. Oh my gosh, they smell so good. All right, the bottom ones are perfectly fine to flip. Yep, they're not sticking at all. My perfectly round meatballs got a little flat on the bottom, but you know what? That happens. Now you could, if you wanted to take the time, you could like put these down there and pull these up, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to waste the time doing it. It's not that important. All right, one more there. All right, looks good. Now that they've kind of shrunk up, you know what I might do? I might be able to fit all of them in now. You know what? That's going to be the ticket. That's going to be that's what we're doing. And that way, oh, look at that. Now we're going to fit them all in. And that way they're going to cook the rest of the way. Because these, the on top did not get as brown, because the crisping basket does a great job at crisping up things. So that'll give these a chance to crisp up. And then we're going to do one more thing, and that is monitor the temperature. Just because you don't want to overcook them or they become a little dry. Now, if you don't have a probe thermometer, you do not need to worry about it. It's not the end of the world. In fact, I usually don't use it, but I mean, I use it for other things, but I don't usually use it for this. But I thought, you know what? Let's use it. And that way we can monitor the temperature while it's cooking inside. So this is an instant read thermometer. I don't want to let too much of the heat out. Let me put that down for a second. This is an instant read thermometer, so you can use it 2 different ways. So you could just use it to test your food like that, or you can use it as a probe. So I really like that function. When I first saw this in the Pampered Chef catalog, somebody asked me about it. Do you think it's worth it? And I was like, oh my God, no, I would never pay $50 for an instant read thermometer. Well, I guess I did, because my husband bought me a $100 Thermopen. So yeah, I do have an expensive one. But ordinarily, I would never buy a $50 thermometer for an instant read. But I found out that this does both. And so for $50, it is a good deal, really. And it works really well. The only thing I don't like is this little button here is a little hard to push in. So turning it on and off, you kind of have to have either a fingernail or, you know, a pen or something like that to do it. That's the only thing I have found that I don't like. I have tested it against my $100 Thermopen MK4, which I love, and it is extremely accurate. So if any of the temperatures were off, it was by just like 1/10 of a degree. All right, so I'm gonna set this probe right in the middle of the meatball there. And then we will lower this and let's see what happens. All right, so I'm gonna let that go. Now, ordinarily I would say another 5 minutes, and then you could cut one open, maybe let it rest a minute or so, or not even. Cut it open and make sure it's done inside, but since we've got the probe, we can just keep checking here. It's at 152 right now. What I'm looking for is a temperature of about 160 to 165. I feel comfortable pulling mine out at 160, letting them rest, or keeping them warm in my marinara sauce, or because I'm gonna reheat them later, I'm gonna cook them again. Undercooking them just a little bit will ensure that they stay juicy. So I'm gonna shoot for that. But to be completely on the safe side, I would take it to 165, especially if you're gonna not let them rest. You're just gonna throw them on the plate to eat them. So 165 is the temperature that you want for ground beef. All right, so while that's going, I'm gonna go ahead and get my zoodles set up, and I've got one zucchini and one squash. Cut the ends off there. And I'm gonna use another Pampered Chef product that I absolutely love. It's just this really lightweight plastic Veggie strip maker is what it's called. I lost that for a minute. Veggie strip maker. So you can use it for zucchini, you can use it for eggplant, you can use it for carrots, you can use it for cabbage. I've shredded cabbage on it. It works great for that. And I'm going to use it for the zucchini and the squash to make the zoodles. I love the shape of these. They are substantial enough that they don't like fall apart when you saute them. So I really like it. It's like, I guess, probably like a fettuccine size. And it cuts both top and back and forth, I should say. Hopefully that makes sense. So let me get a better angle here for you. So you can go down and then back up, and it will do both sides, so it's double-edged. But it's also designed not to cut you, you know? So I've even grated cheese with it. I will say it does not work that great for cheese, but in a pinch I've used it. Once I get my zucchini to where I really can't do any more zoodles with it, I chop it up and put it in my spaghetti sauce, so I don't waste anything. Look at that. They're gorgeous. Beautiful. All right. I'm going to do the other one now, and let's see. Let's check a temp. We went over. That quick. That's okay. All right, so, you know, if you're going to use something like this, make sure you watch it. That's all right. We're not going to have any issues with that. It's fine. All right, so now the meatballs are done. Go ahead and grab this one out. I'll put that out. I'm going to go ahead and dump these in my spaghetti. This is just a marinara sauce, and I made this in the hot cold blender. It's a super easy recipe. I will definitely link to it up there because it is so good and a really quick and easy type of little spaghetti sauce for you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and dump some of these in. I don't need all of them in there. Then I'm going to get this on warm while I saute my zoodles. All right, so I finished doing the squash, and I'm just going to put that over there and take out the basket, and I'm just going to set it there. And I have a good amount of grease in here now, and I'm going to go ahead and use that to saute my zoodles. But you don't need to. You could use some olive oil. You could dump this out. You could really go without any oil if you wanted and just use the sear saute on high. But I always like to add a little flavor to these. So I'm going to just go with the grease that's in there. Go on sear saute. High is what we want. And I'm just going to dump them in. Add a little pepper. You can season them however you like. And a little salt. And they will probably take, gosh, maybe 5 minutes to finish up. Then we'll plate. And I'll give these meatballs a taste. All right, now the last thing I'm gonna add to my zoodles, which is totally optional, I just like a little heat. I'm gonna add in some red pepper flakes. So I like to season the zoodles pretty well because I think that when you layer seasonings and layer flavors, then every single bite is absolutely delicious. And these are done to my liking, okay? You could take them longer if you wanted, but they are completely done the way that I like them. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this on a plate. All right, so I grabbed my blender with my sauce. I also wanted to just have one meatball that hasn't been in the sauce so that I can tell you exactly how that tastes. And if it's anything like the test batches, they're absolutely delicious. Like I could eat those plain, they're so good. All right, now let's get a meatball and some sauce out here. Oh my gosh, this looks so good. I have quite a few meatballs in there. It's hard for me to just get the sauce. Oh my goodness. All right, now. I love cheese. I'm gonna throw a little cheese on there. As you can see, this is a really quick meal. If you wanted to go the whole route and do it in the spaghetti zoodle fashion. You could even do turkey meat instead of ground beef, but I find because it is a little bit leaner, it tends to dry out more, so you might want to add a little bit more moisture. Maybe omit the breadcrumbs, you know, try it that way. But I'm gonna work on some recipes anyway for that because Jeff and I have been eating a lot of ground turkey lately. All right, here we go. First, the meatball. It's got a nice coating on the outside. That's what I like. That's why I like to air fry them. Oh my gosh, that is so good. Wow. The flavor's outstanding. I mean, absolutely outstanding. You might be able to take the salt down if you wanted to. I think it's perfect, but I would say it's just almost just a little too much salt. So I use 3/4 of a teaspoon. You could probably take it down to 1/2 of a teaspoon, but I'm happy with it. All right, here we go. Oh my goodness. This is so good. And let's get one full bite. Unreal. Perfect. Air fried meatballs take no time at all. You know what? You can also make them up ahead of time, pop them in the freezer, and either uncooked or already cooked, and then throw them in your favorite spaghetti sauce. Now, I have a traditional spaghetti recipe that a ton of people have tried and they absolutely love, so I'm gonna link to that right up there. But you could do it this way and cut out some of the carbs. All right, as always, make it yours and make it delicious.